Hello and welcome to the third episode of Big Little Ladies. I am Mac. This is my incredible, awesome, smart, beautifully young co-host, Caitlyn.
Hello, everyone.
And we are super excited to dive into the last 3 episodes of season 1. Oh my gosh, what took us so long? Seriously. I mean, we should have just started this podcast like last year when Big Little Lies started, but we are late in the game. Sorry about it. It happens.
It does.
So, Caitlyn, we are at episode 5 now. That's Once Bitten. But before we dive back into the world of Big Little Lies, do we want to hover over it with an omniscient perspective about anything before we dive into it? Do we want to touch back on anything we touched on last episode?
Yeah, so episode 2, we talked about in episode 2 of Big Little Ladies, we talked about episode Shove. And I think, in that episode we talked a lot about the emotional impact that these moms are kind of having on their children, conscious or unconscious, or aware or unaware of what they're actually doing and how it's affecting them at school, and how they interact with each other as kids. And we also broke down some of the relationships. We see a lot about where we talked a lot about Perry and Celeste's relationship. In the beginning, everything seems very idyllic, and now we get a lot more of reality, especially, talking with the therapist and the way the therapist goes about unveiling their relationship. And then also with the other women, with Renata and Madeline, we learned a lot about Madeline and her family relationship, and the way of dealing with her issues is to not deal with them, and to focus on other people's issues. So there were a lot of relationships and dynamics that were cleared up for us in episode 3 and 4.
Yeah, I love the way you put that together so well. It's true, there were a lot of dynamics that were more exposed. One of the things that I feel like we need to really start wrapping our head around now, before we even dive into season 2, but I did start to think about this during us watching season 2, is a lot of these characters, i.e. a lot of people around the world, are really still stuck with black and white thinking. Like, okay, so Perry could be a great father. If he can be a great father, then he can't possibly abuse Celeste. Like, and we need to start getting away from that kind of black and white thinking, because the truth of the matter is that great fathers can be abusers.
Terrible lovers or terrible partners.
And great partners can be terrible fathers. And you
and the same for women.
Exactly. I mean, Madeline, it's like, she's this big, awesome, bubbly person, cares about people, but then her caring for people when she's completely unaware can go to such a degree, you know what I mean? Because she's not willing to kind of go there within herself. So, I mean, I do love that we see these different dynamics where we see, oh, okay, Celeste and Perry, like, have this really interesting, hot marriage, but oh, wow, like, it's also or it's something else, and it's something else. It's also this actually pretty toxic thing that we're now starting to see, right? So that's one dynamic, right? And then we have the dynamic with Renata and Madeline. Like, what, these girls are in high school.
Right. And yeah, like we said in the last episode, or like we mentioned and touched on, like, Annabella is kind of the one that's sort of reaping the I don't even know, the bad, or she's like experiencing all of the
she's like reaping what her mother's sowing, basically.
Yeah, like with relationships, like with Chloe's mom. And it's interesting also seeing how Madeline varies when mothering Abigail versus, I feel like Abigail would say she has a very completely different mother than Chloe. And it's also interesting how aware Chloe is of her mom, having seen what she goes through with Abigail. So I feel like they have a very different dynamic too, which is being brought out more and more as we
Yeah, it is interesting to see how Madeline has a dynamic with Abigail that she doesn't have with Chloe and vice versa, especially because Chloe's the younger one.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's a lot easier for parents to relate to the younger ones because, I mean, it's a lot easier when your kids look up to you the way that young kids look up to adults.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have a teenager on your hands and, like, all of a sudden, like, they have, sorry, I'm, like, moving my mic so it can actually be heard more. They have, you know, they have opinions and they have valid points to make, and, you know, you may not have thought of these points before, and so I can see how it's easier to relate to a child. But I like how you say, like, I feel Chloe definitely is made wiser by watching her relationship, or rather watching her sister's relationship with her mom. Let's see. Oh yeah, and lastly, of course, we found out, okay, Ziggy's not the bully. He may actually be being bullied. So let's get to Once Bitten. I love this title. The last 3 titles are my favorite. Once Bitten, Caitlyn, take it away.
Nathan spots Jane at the gun range and tells Madeline. Although Jane reassures Madeline that she carries a gun solely for its psychological benefits, Madeline begins to regret tracking down Saxon Baker, the man whom she believes to be Saxon Banks. Renata discovers a bite mark on Amabella's arm, but Amabella refuses to disclose who bit her. Renata assumes it is Ziggy, and a meeting is held between Jane and the school principal. Joseph is convinced Madeline still has feelings for him, but she maintains that their affair is over. While they argue, their car crashes. Madeline is uninjured, while Joseph is hospitalized. The incident raises suspicion from Ed and Joseph's wife, Tori. Perry is angered when Celeste does not ask the twins to tidy their toys. A confrontation triggers further violence from Perry, followed by aggressive sex. Later, Dr. Reisman confronts Celeste with the belief that she is being abused. Celeste eventually reveals that she has previously feared for her life and had considered leaving Perry. Dr. Reisman urges her to do so. Jane secretly travels to San Luis Obispo to confront Saxon Baker, taking her gun with her.
Holy shit, guys. So much happens in these episodes, I swear. How can they stuff so much in 1 hour?
How can they make the summary so...
Right? Whoever wrote these summaries on Wikipedia is just props to you, man. You're doing something right.
You've got good words, man.
Nathan spots Jane at the gun range and tells Madeline. Okay, so let's just say Madeline somehow, it's funny because it's like she butts into people's lives, but then other people butt other people's lives into Madeline's life. Like, it's hysterical how, it's like, why would Nathan just tell Madeline? But whatever, he did, right? So great, now Madeline knows, and now she's worried, right? But Jane tells her that it's solely for psychological benefits. I actually did not know that having a gun had psychological benefits. I could see it. I could.
Yeah, I've like heard for people who are homeless or who live in their car, just like the idea that they have that security if something were to happen, like they're able to sleep better at night or whatever. But it's like statistically having that gun puts you in more danger than not having it, like because, you know, if someone can get it from you, then you're, you know, there are a lot of like terrible things, like options, but
Right.
I have heard, and people who like were in the military who have PTSD who are used to having a gun, but those are like the people who shouldn't. So I'm also like back and forth on it. But
Right. If you need it for your psychological health, you might not need to have a gun in the first place.
yeah.
So that's something that, like, you know, I understand why Madeline kind of is a little apprehensive at that point. However, let's just quickly glaze over to Renata discovering a bite mark on Amabella's arm, like a bite mark. This,
They're like 6 or 7 at this point. Like that's like getting bit by a dog, but like weird, like worse.
like a person.
It's
That is aggressive, guys. Like, Amabella and this poor girl, right? She's getting bullied, and it's funny that the daughter of, like, the, you know, the big, barky, scary mom, like, I'm talking barking, like, literal, she, like, Renata barks, I swear. You know, she's the one getting bullied, like, her daughter. Like, it's really interesting. Like, it's almost like her daughter is doing like everything she can. The universe is doing everything it can via Amabella to like get Renata to feel some sense of vulnerability, and she just will not.
And it's also interesting that the way that they did it, that Amabella literally refuses to admit who did it to her. Like, she knows who it is, like, and she's not comfortable enough with her mom that whatever the threat was, like killing her or hurting her more or whatever, is like holding more true than like like being able to share that with your mom. And I feel like for her it's less fear about what would happen to her and more fear about what her mom would do. And that's like sad. It's sad, but it's I don't know.
It is. It is a little sad because, I mean, I would love it for Renata to be able to have a good relationship with Amabella, but it's not so, you know, if it's clear that Renata loses her shit anytime anything happens, like...
Right, and she still lost her shit. Like, whenever she didn't tell her, she was like, it's Ziggy, and she assumed it was Ziggy, and she was like, Princess went to the principal, and she had no idea. She, like, still had to take action.
Seriously, like, yeah. I mean, I feel for Amabella, dude. Like, for all the kids, like, I feel like she's the one that I cannot help but feel for the most, because, yeah, she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, she's trying to do the right thing, or she's trying to at least, like, be calm about it, or, you know, she's trying to, like, go about it in a way that's, I don't know, a little bit...
conflict.
Right, not just seeking intense confrontation, and her mother just will not let her. You know, of course, Renata's got her own shit going on, too. But.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about why they chose to make their relationship this way. I think both of us are really close to our moms and, you know, feel comfortable confiding in them. But that isn't the case for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have that relationship with their mom. And it's really, I guess, eye-opening, at least on the side, or like the emotional health side, to be able to experience that at least from, you know, a very outside perspective.
Right. Well, speaking of outside perspectives, we just recently found out about Joseph and Madeline's affair, though I gotta say, like, it was in the air every time they had a scene together.
Right.
So, like, yeah, but, you know, we can kind of say we kind of felt that one coming. Now, the interesting thing that I love in this episode is, like, they're all at their hangout spot, right? Jane, Celeste, Madeline. And then Madeline sees Joseph. Joseph somehow calls her over so they can talk, and she gets in the car with him. And then they're driving off to where?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're going to, like, check on some shit, supposedly, at the theater, supposedly. Right? And then this accident happens because Joseph is basically telling Madeline that he's basically saying that she has feelings for him. She's denying it, which, like, Madeline is, like, the queen of denial. Which is funny because, like, she's like, but tell it to my face, girl. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Madeline would rather people tell her things to her face, but then when people tell her things to her face, she's just like...
Doesn't know what to... Yeah, she, like, can't...
So, and it literally causes a fucking accident.
And she was uninjured. She was
uninjured. That is really interesting. I love whoever created this Wikipedia synopsis. Just the way you mentioned, yes, she was uninjured while Joseph was literally hospitalized. And of course, at this point, Ed and Tori think something's up, right? Tori, Joseph's significant other. They think something's up, and I mean, they wouldn't be wrong. It's not like they've kissed or anything since somewhere, but it's, you know, there's an energy there, and
right.
You deny it. It's just gonna.
They may be controlling themselves now,
right?
But that wasn't always the case,
right?
And not everyone is aware of everything that happened, so it is not a lie, but it's not the truth.
But it's not the truth, right? Now, again, we have Perry getting angry with Celeste, because the room isn't clean when he comes home. She didn't ask them, the twins, to tidy their toys, is what it says over here. And a confrontation triggers further violence from Perry, followed by aggressive sex. Now, this is a really interesting dynamic that they have. How, like, I mean, arguably, I get it, like, you know, there's something about, like, the role-playing and the handcuffs, and, like, I get it, like, being dominated, whatever. But even in those situations, there is an insane degree of safety. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, there's an insane degree of trust. Like, you can trust that your partner's never going to overstep a boundary.
To kill you.
Right. This is not the case with
Right.
Celeste and Perry. Like, sometimes it's just like right before, like, he rips off her clothes, you're like, is he gonna rip off her throat?
Right. And I remember like one of the scenes from one of the, like in the police station, one of the people were like, I would want to imagine like what they're like in the bedroom. And it's even like spoiler in season 2, like an episode we watched recently, she was like, Celeste, you got out of it still enjoying sex. Like, even though that, you know, she had a lot of aggressive sex with, and she was like, yeah, it's pretty fucked up. And it's like Celeste, like, does like rough sex, but she also, you know, doesn't want a partner that's not, it's like hard.
It's gonna leave bruises on her every time they
Right.
fucking have sex. Exactly.
So that's, I think this is the first episode where we really see the dynamic of like the beating turning into sex.
It is. Yeah, I think it is one of the first ones, and it's pretty far along. I mean, shoot, we're like at episode 5 at this point. So, okay, so it's super intense and aggressive, right? And then it turns into sex. And then, like, later on, we find her now with the therapist again. And Dr. Reisman, not sure how to pronounce that, confronts Celeste with the belief that she's being abused. And Celeste eventually... Sorry, guys, downtown LA, if you can hear those sirens, you are not getting pulled over if you're in a car listening to this. So, okay, finally we got to Dr. Reisman. Celeste is there, being confronted with the belief that she's being abused, and eventually she caves and tells the doctor how she actually feels, that she's feared for her life, and she's considered leaving. Of course, the doctor urges her to do so. And right, we have this very kind of tumultuous resolve. Because Celeste is a hard nut to crack in spite of, like, it's so interesting how you can see all the things about other people's situations, but when you're deep into your situation, like, you just can't see anything.
Yeah.
Speaking of being blind, Jane literally secretly goes to San Luis Obispo to confront Saxton Baker, taking her gun. Now, I say being blind because she is literally blind by grief and by trauma, and, I mean... to go see if this guy is the guy is one thing. Guys, I swear our windows are closed. Okay. Like,
Wow.
I swear they're closed. Like,
Welcome
see,
to Los
HBO want to
Angeles.
sponsor us? We can record in your fancy studio here in LA. Yeah, okay. Anyway. So, Jane, not only does the bitch go to San Luis Obispo to confront this guy, she also takes her gun. Why? I don't know. But we will find out what happens to her in the next episode. Burning Love. Let's go, because we got 3 episodes to cover this time. Burning Love. I'll do the honors.
Do it. You got it.
Okay. Jane reveals to Madeline that she went to confront Saxton Baker, who turned out to be the wrong man. Madeline attempts to convince Jane to give up the search. Miss Barnes relays to Jane that a petition has begun to have Ziggy suspended. Jane confronts Renata and accidentally gouges her eye. Jane apologizes, realizing that they both want to protect their children. Renata forgives Jane and reveals her plan to schedule playdates with each of Amabella's classmates to discover who is hurting her. Celeste's therapist advises her to prepare to leave Perry by renting an apartment and disclosing the abuse to friends. Later, Perry tries to initiate sex with Celeste, who defensively fractures his penis. Oh, wow, I forgot this happened. With a tennis racket. Returning from the hospital, Perry tells Celeste that she is, quote, lucky, quote, that he did not kill her. The following day, she begins looking for an apartment. At the opening night of Avenue Q, Tori confronts Madeline about having an affair with Joseph. At home, Madeline and Ed have another argument about her lack of passion toward him, which culminates in her alluding to have made a terrible mistake. Nathan discovers that Abigail's secret project is auctioning her virginity to raise money for Amnesty International. Madeline furiously confronts Abigail, disclosing her affair in the process. Wow. I am exhausted just reading that.
Yeah, this episode is something else.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Okay, so Jane tells Madeline she went to confront Saxon. He turned out to be the wrong guy. Now, at this point, am I the only one who was intensely disappointed? Because I just wanted to know that it was him.
Yeah, that's exactly where you are, like, in this, like, in regards to Jane, she's a great mom. Like, her biggest issue is, like, this anger and pain that she can't look past that affects her and therefore, like, affects her kid. And so all you want is, like, for some, like, resolve. Like, you just want that to be resolved for her so that she can, like, move on. And it's sad whenever it, like, turned out not to be anyone, but...
Right, and, I mean, it's interesting to know, too, like... Sorry, guys, I'm, like, fidgeting over here. It's interesting to know, too, that she knew the moment that it wasn't him. Like, the second she looked, she knew. Which I guess, in a way, like, gives you some certainty that, okay, well, the second they show us who it is, because they have to at some point, we'll know, right? So, okay, that's interesting. That happened. We left that for a while, and we go along to Madeline attempts to convince Jane to give up the search, right? So Jane now, she's like, it's the wrong guy. Madeline's like, you know, maybe this is best settled, right? And from what we see, Jane isn't quite decided, but she leaves it enough alone, enough for us to go over to Miss Barnes, letting her know.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I feel bad for Jane in this episode because she's triggered so hard by the last episode, by the whole Saxon, and then she's, like, put in all of these really more triggering situations.
Like Miss Barnes with the... Dude.
Right.
The petition?
Yeah, for Ziggy's suspension by Renata, because Renata still, like, won't give up that it's Ziggy even though she has zero proof.
Right, and
it leads Jane to kind of explode a little. I think she literally explodes on Renata.
She literally explodes on Renata and, like, gouges her eye. Like, actually, Renata, I believe, wears an eye patch for, like, a second this episode. And then, of course, later on, though, she goes over to Renata's house and, like, actually physically apologizes. And then they actually both end up coming up with a great, like, proactive solution, which I'm just, like... If we had all just talked in the first place, this may or may not have happened.
I was so glad that happened because that's like this is the first time where like some resolution has happened that's like actually like been a real like make sense. Like they talked to each other, they like thought about each other's opinions from the other. Like this is like a full, and I was like, it's the first time we're on episode 6. I finally have a healthy way of dealing with an issue. Like praise Jesus.
Praise Jesus. It happened. So that's cool. Like, I love the whole play date idea with Amabella's classmates to kind of discover what's happening. That's a great fucking idea. Right? Next, we have Celeste's therapist advises her to prepare to leave Perry by renting an apartment, disclosing the abuse to friends. Up until at this point, Celeste really hasn't talked about it. No one knows that this is happening behind closed doors.
Right. The therapy sessions are really, like... I don't know how I feel about this therapist. She, like, gives her opinion... a lot. She doesn't help Celeste form her own opinion. She's like, no, and like some I get like abusees may need that. Victims, yeah, may need that. But it's like I can't imagine like going to see my therapist and her like I think the way that it's said, you just read it. She tells her therapist something.
Let's see.
Celeste's therapist advises her to prepare to leave Perry. And, okay, so advises is like a softer word. Like, that is good advice. But, I don't know. I, like, struggle with the therapist because she doesn't try very hard to understand Celeste. She just, like, sort of, like, gives her, like, oh, this is what you have to do. And I think she even, like, advised her to... set up something so that if she was attacked she'd be able to protect herself, and that's like where the tennis racket came in. She like set up a tennis racket so if he attacked her or like tried to do anything she could grab the tennis racket, and it ended up with the penis being broken. And I'm not sure like why I don't know, a therapist would advise like physical, I mean I get you need to protect yourself, but I don't know. I can't decide if like she's a great therapist and I like am crazy, or if
I feel like just like we can't be like, oh, these ladies are great people, they're not, oh, they're terrible people. We can't be like, oh, this is a great therapist, this is a shitty therapist. Like I don't remember anything about the tennis racket having to do with the therapist, but I also don't remember a lot about last season. So I mean I totally get protecting herself, and I get what you're saying with like the therapist kind of just telling her what to do. I understand to a degree, like, she wants to get her out of the violent situation, because if you're in that fight or flight, you're never gonna have, like, the brain capacity to actually think about anything else.
Right.
So I get her wanting to get her out, but it's definitely, like, she doesn't have a great way of validating Celeste at all, in a lot of her emotions. Like, that's another thing of adopting that and approach, knowing that we can be one thing and be the complete opposite at the same time. You know, Celeste can have a really great marriage and a really awful marriage at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that, like, the therapist is not validating the part of her that is grieving the marriage, because at this point it is over. If he's hitting you, it's over. But there's still grief there that needs to be felt, and I feel like she doesn't really acknowledge that.
Right.
And I feel like that's part of why Celeste has such a hard time, like, actually ever letting go.
Mm-hmm. But she does start looking for an apartment, and I feel like she's it's funny because she deals with it, like, she's very smart. Like, she's like, how could I say, you know, like, how could I, she, like, the way she self-analyzes it is very like, analytical.
And it's intelligent and logical, but when it comes to doing the things,
it's easier said than done, I guess.
exactly. And I mean, it's so interesting to me that, like, she broke his penis. She, like, literally breaks his dick.
Like,
and that is pretty scary. That scene where he tells her that she's lucky that he didn't kill her. Like, in that moment, you're glad she's looking for apartments at that point. And I do believe that that's what shook her into finally looking for an apartment. Now, we wrap up this episode with the opening night of Avenue Q, which, by the way, Avenue Q is, like, a really funny show. It's too bad that it's, like, in the context of this very dramatic TV show. And Tori actually confronts Madeline about the Joseph affair. And that's pretty stressful. And it's funny because we don't know much about Tori. We don't know anything about her. And then she comes up, like, out of the blue and just... I mean, she was pretty, like, her energy was pretty strong in the hospital and stuff. But it's not until, like, this point where you're like, oh, okay, this girl, like, she knows there are things going on. And, yeah, and eventually that actually, you know, Ed picks up on the energy and it leads them to have another argument yet about how she lacks passion towards him. And that's, like, a theme with Ed. He's, like, the stable guy. That's, like, a thing with him. He's the guy that Madeline relies on. But he's not the guy she, like, has the hots for. And I think that, like, that sucks, you know, for a partner.
Because he doesn't feel validated in that way. And it's, like, they both deserve to have, like, all of their feelings and emotions and physical whatever is validated. And that's, like, a huge thing, I think, with marriage, like, why we have a lot of issues with marriages nowadays is, like, a lot of people look at marriage as, like, a life, like, how am I gonna be the most steady for the rest of my, like, how am I gonna not have to worry about whatever, and it's less about the actual, like, like, you have to have, like, a genuine, like, want and love for each other to be able to look past of all, like, Madeline is, like, he is able to look past of all of Madeline's crazy crap,
right,
and still, like, love her
Bless
on,
his
like,
soul.
a forever basis. And it's like that, yeah, with it's like an interesting, because I mean, a lot of marriages nowadays are, like, more not like arrangements, but they're like
social arrangements. They're not, like, this commitment to grow with each other. You know, they're this commitment that, like, okay, I'm gonna stay like this and you're gonna stay like that, and we're gonna do our best to basically hijack the universe and not change ever. And it's just like, you can't do that. No relationship, like, your best friends that you have, think about it right now, the best friends that you ever have, you were not the same person that you were when you met them.
True.
And the reason that you're still best friends is because you can both accept that about each other. And you can both, like, own where each other have grown and grow. And so, it is, we come to an interesting corner here, not just in relation to Madeline and Ed, but literally to
the entire family.
The entire family, to so many marriages in general, right? Like, how many marriages are, quote, quote, ruined by someone making a terrible mistake, which often, to be honest, is cheating, which, I'm just going to say it, people can hate on me, cheating is a symptom, not the cause. Like, Like, it's not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. You know, and Madeline here admits to Abigail, I don't know if she admits to Abigail, I think she does at this point admit to Abigail, I think, yeah, that she's made a terrible mistake. And Abigail, you know, gets a hint probably that it is Joseph. And now, okay, I know I said that we were going to talk about 3 episodes, but your homegirl has to get ready for work, and the last episode of the season deserves its own time, and we might even rope in the first episode of season 1.
Yeah.
Into next episode, so that might work out too. So let's wrap up this episode. Before we get to story time, the last thing we see is Abigail's secret project is revealed. What do you think, Caitlyn?
I feel like this secret project, this entire time, from the first episode, we've seen Abigail and Madeline don't have the best relationship. It's only devolved. Madeline hasn't dealt with it in the ways that she would actually fix it. She's just, like, pushed it or, like, tried to, like, mend it in ways, like, non-conscious or aware ways, just, like, trying to, like, fix it. And I feel like this is the, like, final implosion. Like, this is the longest that Madeline could push something off, like, emotionally, and not have to worry about her own emotional state until it, like, got to a place where, like, something crazy or something whatever had to happen for her to change. And I feel like this, like, Madeline's like, oh, like, I have to be a mom now. Like, I can't actually, and it's interesting. It just says that the dad found out, Nathan discovers Abigail's secret project of auctioning her virginity, and of course he tells Madeline.
Of course.
And the way that Madeline chose to relate to her daughter is to admit her own mistakes, and that's an interesting whole situation in and of itself too. What do you think about that?
I mean, I'm honestly proud of the way that she went about it. At the end of the day, I really am. I'm happy that Madeline kind of got this, like...
Opened up.
Yeah, she opened up, and especially to her daughter, because that's another thing, guys. Parents out there, like, if you're parents, your kids don't give 2 shits if you're perfect. They give shits if you're relatable. Perfection is not relatable. Okay? No teenager wants to compare themselves to the mom who got straight A's or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? Like, at that moment, what Abigail needed to hear was exactly that Madeline had a problem and she went about the wrong way of fixing it. And that's exactly what Abigail's doing. It's like she's got this thing on her hands and she's going about the wrong way of handling it. And I thought it was a genius kind of way of going about it, you know? You know, I mean, Abigail, or Madeline, of course, at first is furious, but then, you know, as she's allowed to process her anger in a healthy way, she goes on and she confesses to this thing that she's done. And to be honest, it's like, you know, yeah, this kind of comes back to bite her in the ass in season 2. However, I still believe it's a really endearing moment, and it's kind of like the Renata and Jane reunion situation, or I don't know, like truce, whatever you want to call it. It's like one of those moments that you're like, oh, okay, so there is hope for, like, functioning relationships out there.
Like, it forced Madeline to have an emotional connection with her daughter. Like, it forced, it made, like, something had to happen eventually where, like, it made her crack so that they could actually get on a level where they, like, had genuine respect for each other. And, like, and it's hard, like, mother-daughter relationship, especially as teenagers. I mean, there's always that.
And arguably, I believe that was the moment that Madeline stopped seeing Abigail as, like, this child that wouldn't understand, like, adult matters.
Right, like, like, she, forever, Madeline tried to look perfect, and like Max said, it's impossible. Not one single person on this planet is perfect, and so...
And no teenager wants to fucking be compared to their perfect parent. Like, let's just say that. Like, that's the worst kind of pressure.
And talking about the actual issue, selling your virginity, as trying to think about it from Abigail's perspective, like, would you ever actually want to sell your virginity at 16?
I mean, I get where she was coming from in the sense that, like, before we keep going and talking about this show, we gotta have a basic understanding of human psychology, and it's the fact that we are fragmented people, okay? Just because we can't cut off our arms and live without them, it doesn't mean that our consciousness doesn't work that way. Whenever you're traumatized as a child, you basically slice off a part of yourself that was rejected by your parents or your caregivers in order to survive. So, as a child, if I throw a hissy fit and anger is not allowed in my family, well, guess what? The part of me that gets angry gets sliced away, and now she gets stuck into a place of my subconscious, and she only comes up when I get hyper-triggered, and I don't even see her come up. And then later on, I just hear people going, dude, you're so angry, and I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. We have a ton of these little beings that we've sliced away, right? And so what's happening in this moment, Abigail's got a fragment of her being that is yearning for this sense of acceptance and belonging and purpose. And, you know, and then she's got another fragment that's going, well, you're just a privileged white girl. What can you do? And together, however misguided, those two fragments come up with, well, let's sell our virginity, right? A white girl selling her virginity, like, boom, money. Like, this company is going to get hella money. And she doesn't realize, of course, she's a virgin. She doesn't realize that doing, you know, having sex with someone that you love is a nerve-wracking and intense experience, much less, like, doing it on this kind of basis. And she makes a silly decision because she has no adult to be a sounding board for her.
Right. Yeah.
Like, if she had brought this decision forth before she actually went through with the thing and made a website and everything, do you really honestly think that anybody would have helped her think through it, even for a moment? No. Which is a fucking flaw. Because if someone had been like, okay, let's, like, I don't agree with this, but let's say that you did this. Let's walking her through, just, like, for those of you, by the way, that, you know, whatever, like, I don't care. I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. Walking her through the actual experience of walking in the door to that hotel room with the winner, whatever, 2.5 seconds, and that girl's like, yeah, never mind. But it takes accepting her offer first, accepting her idea, seeing the validity in it, giving it to her that it is valid, but maybe in practice, let's see how it plays out. And the human brain is very keen and very intelligent, and it would play it out in a way, if you're like a movie director and you describe that shit enough to her to a point where most parents probably wouldn't want to, and that's why your kids don't tell you shit, or part of why your kids are afraid to tell you shit, you know, because you don't take their ideas as your own, she would have changed her mind.
Right, and that's the thing, is, like, thinking about it, like, practically and emotionally, like, Abigail definitely probably would have changed her mind, like, whenever she thought about it fully, and so it's really cool to see, like, when teenagers make mistakes, it's never because they're trying to make mistakes or do stupid things, it's because it's the way, you know, they're going about dealing with the things that are bothering them, and Abigail, you know, didn't realize that this wasn't a healthy way for her to get attention until after, you know, she realized that, you know, when her mom, you know, disclosed it, she realized that she was about to make an actual mistake. And that's, like, really, I think, a good thing for teenagers to understand. And, you know, whenever we do make mistakes, like, you know, losing or whatever, any mistake, it's never, you know, you're not going into it trying to make a mistake. You're trying to do something for it. I don't know. It's important to definitely delve into the reasons.
Yeah, and to delve into the practical aspect, which never happens when a parent is just like, nope, terrible idea, try something else.
Right.
That is not going to work with your teenagers. That will work with your 2-year-olds. Maybe.
Not our cat.
Not our cat. Okay, speaking of our cat, we are going to hit You Get What You Need, episode 7, season 1, Big Little Lies, next time. And we may even talk about What Have They Done, episode 1, season 2. But for now, we're going to move on to story time with the Big Little Ladies.
And Mac has a good old story to tell.
I have a good old story to tell. Okay, I've got 5 minutes. Let's go.